10 was a plague of darkness, and we talked about, have you ever been in the darkness so dark that the only way you knew the hand was on the end of your wrist is when you went and touched your face. Okay? Now, to me, that's the darkness that you can feel. Because you can't really feel much from anything else. You don't want to take a step any direction. You don't know what to sit down. You don't know what's around you. I mean, 2 seconds ago you might have known, but as soon as that darkness hits, you just want to stand in one spot until, see a light to see which way you're going. Then after that, brought the plague of the firstborn. Now God told Moses to tell the Israelite people that they were to take a lamb, an unblemished lamb, and they were to take the blood from that lamb and paint it using hyssop, I believe it is, and paint the top of the roof of the doorway and the sides, so when the angel of death passed over, it would ignore those houses. Because he sent the angel of death to take the firstborn of each livestock and humans. And even told Moses, he said, the Pharaoh will refuse to listen to you. And he said, so that my wonders may be multiplied in Egypt. And Moses and Aaron performed all the wonders before Pharaoh, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let the Israelites go out of his country. So the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, this month is to be for you the first month of the year of your year. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household. And we covered this where if any household's too small for a whole lamb, then they must share one with the nearest neighbor, meaning they had to eat the whole lamb. And they didn't just cook the meat, they cooked everything. Head, legs, everything. Okay, and they had to put bitter herbs on it. I assume that was ketchup. Because ketchup makes everything taste better. And anything that was left in the morning, they had to burn it. And they had to, if they had any bread they had to be unleavened, meaning no yeast, because it was an act of showing that they're in a hurry to get out of it. So every time they hold Passover, which is what this is leading to, then the Lord wants them to in essence, make a meal that's quick, easy, out the door, like peanut and jelly. So, let me see here. Feast of the Unleavened Bread, because it was the way this day to celebrate the day that I brought the divisions out of Egypt. Celebrate this day as a lasting ordinance for generations to come. In the first month, you are to eat bread made without yeast. From the evening of the 14th day until the evening of the 21st day. They had to do this for 7 days. And Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and said to them, go at once and select the animals of your families and slaughter the Passover lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood in the basin, and put some of the blood on the top and both sides of the door frame. Not one of you shall go out of the door of this house until morning. This is similar to the hailstone that fell. He said, if you want to survive, you stay inside. Anything outside will be killed. And the hailstones fell. So he's telling them, he said, go inside, stay inside, and then, but do this so that the Lord will pass. Says, when the Lord goes through the land to strike down the Egyptians, he will see the blood on the top and sides of the door frame, and will pass over that doorway, and will not permit the destroyer to enter your houses or to strike you down. To obey these instructions is lasting an ordinance for you and your descendants. When you enter the land that the Lord will give you, as he promised, observe a ceremony, and when your children ask, what does this ceremony mean to you? Then tell them, it is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord. He passed over the house of the Israelites in Egypt, and spared our homes when he struck down the Egyptians. When the people bowed down and worshipped, the Israelites did just what the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on the throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner, who was in the dungeon, and the firstborn of all the livestock as well. Pharaoh and all his officials, and all of the Egyptians got up during the night, and there was a loud wailing in Egypt, for there was not a house without someone dead. And that's a lot of dead people. God shows this every time God came to Moses and told him to go to Pharaoh. Every plague, every miracle that was done was to do one of two things. Mostly it was to show the Pharaoh that he was the only God. And the other was to show the Pharaoh that what he was worshiping was not a God. He brought the frogs up because they have like a god of frogs in the Nile, turned the Nile to blood. So everything he did was to show Pharaoh that those aren't gods. Those were just, you made up a God and it doesn't exist. I am the only true God. So during the night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, up, leave my people. You and the Israelites go, worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds as you have said, and go, and also bless me. So it gives an indication here that Pharaoh actually goes, look, all right, your God's more than I can handle. Bless me so that, I get a little something from your God. And it's almost a way of just saying that, I believe that you worship a God, and I don't. Okay, then the Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the country, for otherwise, they said, we will all die. So they recognized God was the true God, and what they worshiped was not, or a lot more powerful than anything they thought was a God. So the people took their dough before the yeast was added and carried it on their shoulders in kneading troughs, wrapped in clothing. The Israelites did as Moses instructed and asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and gold and for clothing. The Lord had made the Egyptians favorably disposed toward the people, and they gave them what they asked for. So they plundered the Egyptians. So not only were they freed, but they conquered. Okay, and I imagine whenever they asked whoever they were considered the bondservant to, the Egyptians, they say, we're leaving, and we want to take, give us gold and silver. And the Egyptians were so grateful to get them out of the city. Yeah, take it all. Take whatever you want. Just leave. The Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, and there were about 600,000 men on foot, besides the women and children. Many other people went up with them, as well as large droves of livestock, both flocks and herds. And with the dough they had brought from Egypt, they baked cakes of unleavened bread. And the dough was without yeast, because they had been driven out of Egypt and did not have time to prepare food for themselves. Now the length of time the Israelite people lived in Egypt was 430 years. And at the end of the 430 years, this very day, all the Lord's divisions left Egypt, because the Lord kept vigil at night to bring them out of Egypt. And on this night, all of the Israelites are to keep vigil to honor the Lord for the generations to come. Why do you suppose the 430 is significant as being addressed in this? Now, in Genesis 15, we'll go back to verse 11. And when the fowls came down upon the carcass, Abraham drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said to Abram, know of the surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy father's place, to thy fathers in peace, and thou shalt be buried in the good old age. So now, when I read this back a while ago, Abraham made a sacrifice to the Lord. And I think that whenever the birds came down to eat on the sacrifice, out of instinct, he just went and shooed them away rather than just let it go. In a sense, I thought that was like he just didn't trust God whenever he performed the sacrifice, that he just didn't trust God, and in a sense doubted God, So God had them, told them that your generations for 400 years will be in captivity. And it seems like a pretty harsh thing, but that's the way I read that, and that's what I got from that. Since when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away.
So you think the prophecy was punishment?
Yeah, that's the way I see it. Because he said, prepare a sacrifice to me, a burnt offering, and when he prepared it, it was like, how do you know that God didn't send the birds? It's kind of a test of I don't know what the word is. Kind of like a test for Abraham to see if he's actually, trusting in God. And that says, well, I prepared this sacrifice. How do these beasts, these birds that are coming to desecrate this sacrifice, and he chased them away. But that's how I see it. And I've been wrong before. It's happened. So there's a possibility. But I'm not going to throw that out there just yet.
So join your group of scholars who none of them agree on this part of Genesis. Because the custom is so ancient that some of the writers say we have no record of it. Others guess what it symbolizes.
Well, the reason I come to that conclusion, just for the mere fact, is that a sleep fell upon Abram, and a horror of great darkness fell upon him, which to me says he probably had a nightmare. I could put the word horror of great darkness and you fell in a deep sleep, made that go hand in hand. But when he said to Abram, knowing of the surety of thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them for 400 years. It makes me wonder if God would have actually done that if he didn't shoo away the birds. Yeah, well, that's actually what happened, so that's why I see that as that. But that's what studying the Word of God brings us, is more understanding, and more people that bring their understandings together. The Holy Spirit intercedes, and we get better understanding. So the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, these are the regulations for the Passover. Now, no foreigner is to eat of it. Any slave you have brought may eat of it after you have circumcised him, but a temporary resident and a hired worker may not eat of it. Now, if you go back a little bit, it talks about many other people went up with them, as well as large droves of livestock with flocks and herds. And I'm guessing that many other people would have been like they married Egyptian people. They were there 430 years. Joseph married an Egyptian priestess, daughter of a priest. So the chances are pretty good. And I'm guessing that when I read these, I couldn't find better clarity in other people's writings as to say, well, who are the many other people that went up with them?
Some think there were other slaves. The Pharaoh had enslaved other nations as well. Egypt was a place that tribes and people go to during time of famine. We see that way back to Abraham's time, Isaac's time, and history tells us that. And so some writers think that he had enslaved other groups. And again, primarily military fear. These are Semite people. The Egyptians are Hamitic people. And so it might have been other slaves. I think the King James is a mixed multitude. A lot of sermons have been written and preached on a mixed multitude. I don't know if that's the correct application of that, but a lot of them think there's other slaves. They're married too.
Yeah. One of the commentaries I read from somebody else, I forget who it was that they had it was marriages that they had. So by birth they would have been Egyptian. By marriage, as soon as we see it, would have been Egyptians and Jewish. But here it says, a temporary resident and a hired worker may not eat of it. So it could have been some of those that followed them. But it must be eaten inside one house, and take none of the meat outside of the house. Do not break any of the bones. The whole community of Israel must celebrate it. An alien living among you who wants to celebrate the Lord's Passover must have all of the males in his household circumcised. Then he may take part like one born in the land, so no uncircumcised male may eat of it. And the law applies to the native born and to the alien living among you. All of the Israelites did just what the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. And on that very day, the Lord brought the Israelites out of Egypt by their divisions. God also goes on to talk about the consecrations of the firstborn. And these are all things that he talks to the Israelite people. It's just like, I saved you, now these are the things you have to do, because, it's starting to give them the rules and the laws to live by. The Lord said to Moses, consecrate to me every firstborn male, the first offspring of every womb from the Israelites belongs to me, whether a man or animal. And Moses said to the people, commemorate this day, the day you come out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, because the Lord brought you out of it. And with he brought you out of it with a mighty hand. Eat nothing containing yeast. Today, in the month of Abib, you are leaving. And when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites, the land he swore to your forefathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you are to observe the ceremony in this month for 7 days. Eat the bread made without the yeast, and on the 7th day hold a festival to the Lord. Eat unleavened bread during these 7 days. Nothing with yeast in it is to be seen among you, and nor shall any yeast be seen anywhere within your borders. On that day tell your son, I do this because of what the Lord did for me. And when I came out of Egypt, the observance will be for you like a sign on your hand and reminder on your forehead, as the law of the Lord is to be on your lips. For the Lord brought you out of Egypt with his mighty hand, and you must keep his ordinance at the appointed time year after year. Now, what I found in studying this is that it shall, on that day, observance will be for you like a sign on your hand and a reminder on your forehead that the law of the Lord is to be on your lips. Reference to this, a lot of it was for like the Pharisees had tassels, and some of the Catholic priests have little beads and stuff that they carry, like the rosary beads, and those are reminders of prayers and stuff like that. And it's the way I read this was like, as sure as you know the back of your hand, and as sure as you know you have a forehead, that these things are to be common knowledge to things. These are things you should practice. These are things you should do, so that it should become everyday practice. That it's not something you have to, go, oh, I gotta remember to do this. It should become so practiced that it's and that's what I found as the meaning. It says, but the law of the Lord is on your lips, for the Lord brought you out of Egypt with his mighty hand, and you must keep this ordinance at the appointed time, year after year. So God wants you to not have him remind you, hey, Passover's coming in a week. Like I got calendars set with events like today's Mother's Day, Happy Mother's Day, and we got calendars set for Father's Day, Labor Day, Memorial Day. I don't know how many people can remember all those events. I remember my birthday, and that's about it.
Not a Hallmark calendar.
Well, I remember my sister's birthdays because they fall like 3 days around mine or whatever. So that's not too difficult to remember. But anything other than that, I mean, good grief. Back when I was married, I got married on my birthday, and I still didn't remember my anniversary. So, notice I said back when I was married. So.
You get too many anniversaries, you won't be here. Am I wrong?
I'm playing out that one.
I forgot mine once, and my mother-in-law reminded me. You better believe I got it from my wife.
Yeah, I'm sure she told her.
Yeah, you better believe she did. Before I got home.
But these are some things that God wants them to remember. It should be something that comes upon and you something you should look forward to. A great reminder. God saved them from the Egyptian, and He wants them to remember and to worship Him and say, God, for 7 days, we'll do just what you say. And in celebration, at the seventh day, they have a celebration and worship the Lord because He brought them out of captivity. They were there 430 years. I'd be pretty grateful too. And after the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites and gives it to you, as He promised an oath to you and your forefathers, you are to give over to the Lord the first offspring of every womb. All firstborn males of your livestock belong to the Lord. Redeem with a lamb every firstborn donkey, but if you do not redeem it, you to break its neck and redeem every firstborn among your sons. In the days to come, when your son asks you, what does this mean? Say to him, with a mighty hand, the Lord brought us out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, and Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go. The Lord killed every firstborn in Egypt, both man and animal. This is why I sacrifice to the Lord the first male offspring of every womb, and redeem each of my firstborn sons. It will be like a sign on your hand and a symbol on your forehead that the Lord brought us out of Egypt with His mighty hand. Now, I think it's kind of amazing is that when he writes on this and says, a sign on your forehead and a sign on your hand, okay, that the Satan tries to distort this and make a mockery of it, because the mark of the beast in Revelations it talks about will either be on your right hand or on your forehead, for the world to see that you can only do transactions if you have the mark of the beast. So I think the devil or Satan uses this as a kind of a perversion. When God tells them that you should know it as easy as you do the back of your hand, or on your forehead. So I think that's one of the things that He does, and He says, because God tells the Israelite people this. So what more of a perversion is saying that, do this because this is what it means. It said that when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. For God said if they faced war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert toward the Red Sea. Now, the Israelites went up out of Egypt armed for battle. Imagine they were, fixed to fight because, Pharaoh many times did not let them go. So they probably thought that this time he's letting us go, he's probably still going to come after us, so we have to be prepared for any type of battle that might ensue. Okay? But not everybody's ready for battle. Not everybody's ready to go to war. There was a comedian once said that he thinks that if we have to go to war, we have to just go and just recruit all the rednecks. Because if you talk to any of them, they're all ready to go to war. So we should just send them in because,
Send Plumber and all his guns. He won't need anybody. He's got guns in every room of his house.
Yeah, that guns get guitars. 2 G's. Anyways, God knows your heart and minds of these people. And He's already looking at this and said that He sent them, instead of sending them on the road through the Philistine country, He said, because it was shorter, God said He was going to take them to the northern route. Now, one thing that in my studies it says that the translation here says the Red Sea. For other translations, it says the Sea of Reeds. And the Sea of Reeds is already shallow. It's only about 4 feet deep. Okay? But in the commentary I was reading, they said that if you look at where God said He led the people, it's the translation comes out better to the Red Sea, than it does to the Sea of Reeds. So, but it's all a matter
of. The Sea of Reeds minimizes the miracle.
Yes.
And many modern commentators have considered that.
Well, it's in search of, as I mentioned before, that they tried to scientifically denounce the miracles that Moses performed One was they said there was a volcano erupted off of Sicily, which, caused the water, and since the ash fell and turned the Nile to red. And I thought, well, what a coincidence. That when Moses stretched out his hand and turned the Nile red, that volcano ash hit the water at the same time.
Remember the TV series years ago, Time Tunnel? Two time travelers go back to the time of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho, and an earthquake occurs and walls fall down. And somebody turns and says, "See, God didn't do it." And another guy said, "How did it happen at the exact right moment?" Either way you look at it, it's God doing it. It's a miracle. Because none of us know when the tornado's going to hit, or the earthquake, or death, or whatever.
I think there's people play the Beatles with trumpets, such good at hitting that right note, to vibrate those walls so they collapsed. I wouldn't want to blame it on me, because you never know if they had that 1 GHz note. There's a rumor that says that 8 GHz is resonant frequency that causes your sphincter to relax, meaning you dirty yourself, right? And that was one of my burglar things I was going to set, was that 2 transponders on either side of the window. So when they break in the house, but turn around, go.
Then you guys clean it up.
That'd still be funny.
Stuff's missing and you got a mess.
Wouldn't be hard to find the guy that did it. Call it a trail. So when Pharaoh let the people go, Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, because Joseph had made the sons of Israel swear an oath. He had said, "God will surely come to your aid, and you must carry my bones with you from this place." So the time they kept their bones, they were in the grave for like 3 days, and then they would take the bones and they would put them in a box.
In the grave for a year, they decompose it.
And they would put your bones in a box.
Called
And-
ossuary.
And one of the things that cracked me up was I saw a thing on there that said they found a box that had DNA of Jesus in it. And I was like,
How'd they get his DNA?
I don't know. That's one question. How do you get his DNA? You sample the box, this is Jesus.
I'm guessing they think several years ago, they discovered an ossuary when they bought it. They said James,
Yeah.
the brother of Jesus, or something like that. Now, that could be a coincidence, or after a certain time in history, the Jews, Orthodox Jews, never named their children Jesus, Yeshua, Yehoshua, whatever variant of that. They just refused to do so. So maybe they did something like that, but
There was,
you'd think they have human DNA though.
You think? Yeah, at some point.
I don't know, how long does a human hair stick around? How do you know who it belongs to?
That's,
I don't know. There's that one lady. You ever see her? That Cece, whatever her name is. That woman can prove anything.
I used to make a joke.
She's a DNA specialist. She's amazing.
John Warwick used to have that psychic hotline. And when you call, they say, "Hello, who's this?" If you're a psychic, you tell me. There was,
why did she go bankrupt with that? How did she go bankrupt? If you're a psychic, you know you're going to go bankrupt. Right?
yeah,
You think?
and she could tell people's future, she just couldn't balance her checkbook. There was a news article which was later debunked. They said it was almost like a National Enquirer when the article was written, that underwater archaeologists discovered remains of chariots and bones, skeletal bone remains at the bottom, in the mud at the bottom of the Red Sea. Okay, it was to prove, the crossing of the Red Sea by Moses and the Israelites, and that Pharaoh was swamped with the water afterwards. But like I said, they put a debunking in there saying that it's kind of like the National Enquirer, which is which Men in Black, they grabbed those magazines because that's the only true news source. So after leaving Succoth, they camped at Etham on the edge of the desert. By day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. And the Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp there by Haverah, between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea, directly opposite Baal Zephon. Pharaoh will think the
Yeah, probably
Israelites.
the names, aren't you?
Yeah, well, it's English language always confuses me.
It's deeper, yeah.
And the idea here is that God told them, He said, Pharaoh will think that the Israelites are wandering around in the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart. Yeah, that's the next word. And he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did this. So God's still playing with Pharaoh. You know, it's like a chess game. You know, He's telling the Israelites, "Why don't you go up here? Just why don't you go over here? Go over here. Go over there." You know, and Pharaoh will think you're lost in the desert, and you'll be an easy prey. Kind of like when you set the trap out, you know, and you put whatever the bait is in the trap, and the small animal catches, and then they sneak around and they go in and eat it. They think they're going to get away with it, and the trap sets. I have a small animal catch trap, and I caught cats in it. So, not something I really wanted. But, when the king of Egypt was told that his people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, What have we done? We let the Israelites go and have lost our services. So they had their chariots made ready and took the army with them. He took 600 of his best chariots, along with all of the other chariots of Egypt, with officers all over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites, who were marching out boldly. The Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea near that place, Pi, opposite of Baal Zephon. I tried to bring a map up to give you an idea of whereabouts it's at. If you try to ask for the route of the Israelites, I got shipping routes of the Israelites, routes of the Philistines, everything in there.
They give you tracking on.
Yeah. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching over them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses, "Why was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us out to the desert to die?" Sarcasm. "What have you done to us, bringing us out of Egypt? Did we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you need only to be still." This complaining, we would have been better off to be in captivity, having a life of misery, so we can complain every day about the misery of being in captivity, than, to believe in God that He's going to save us, and then just have a little faith. I've of all the things that they went through and all the miracles that they saw, they still don't believe that God was right there on everything. And I think it's in a way it was God is kind of like trying to show them without being so powerful, because he could have just, earlier he said to Pharaoh, he goes, I could just snap my finger and you'll all be gone. I could have took you all off the earth. But instead, he teaches lessons. So the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry land. I will harden the heart of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them, and I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord, and when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots and his horsemen, then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of the Israel army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night, the cloud brought darkness to the one side and light to the other side, so neither went near the other all night long. And then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. I've seen some kind of cartoons they draw. They do this. And they show the waters, and as the Israelite people go through, they can see whales, fish, swimming around in the water beside them. Which, I mean, that would have to be quite an accomplishment. Just, you see a vast amount of water, and the winds came up. The amount of wind that would have took, you'd think it would have blew the people away, but it didn't. It just moved the water.
Because that kind of disproves the sea of reeds,
Yes.
which is denying the validity of the scriptures.
Well, we said that the scientists say that it's most possibly the Sea of Reeds because they just don't believe that God can, separate that much water. As I've heard my plumber makes a joke about it. Says, what if you donate a kidney and you get the heaven you need? So if he made one the first time, I'm pretty sure he has plans and I'll make another one.
So you're saying the Sea of Reeds isn't deep enough to have made like walls of water?
It's only about 4 feet deep.
Okay, well then that can't be right.
And the scholars try to justify, and it's not all scholars, it's very liberal ones, by saying, well, what clogged up the wheels of the chariots? Well, it was mud, obviously.
Yeah,
Right? God brings it back.
could have been carcasses.
Yeah, it doesn't say if any fish were left behind. So the Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. And during the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it in confusion. He made the wheels of their chariots come off, so that they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Some of them are smart. A little late, smart.
Right, when
Yeah, they need that. What they used to say, suck it up and fight. Stop complaining, get in there. Yeah. Pull up the videos.
But my daughter would say, "Pull the
put on your big girl panties.
yeah, pull up your big girl thing." That's her favorite. And I ream her out for being so gender specific.
So,
And she reams me out for making, a man supposedly slurs a lady.
Chauvinistic remark.
There you go. My age and my
Bible does that a lot. They don't want to mention women at all.
Sure they do.
it talks about a different time.
Remember something, Genesis 3:15, first promise of Messiah, Adam's not involved, because there's a seed of woman.
I'm just being silly.
Where would we be without mama, right?
Yeah. Well, it's told
My
the
mama
twins.
always reminded me of that, where would you be without?
Oh, yeah, I intend to tell my daughter today.
I told the twins, said you make sure you wish your mom a happy birthday or happy Mother's Day. I said, because without her, you wouldn't be here.
They didn't argue with you?
I think he ignored me soon after. I
I'm
said,
sure the one would have given you some conclusion that he would be here anyway.
Yeah. Then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and the horsemen. The entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea, not one of them survived. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry land, with a wall of water on the right and left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. When the Israelites saw the great power of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. This gets questioned later on. Moses gets questioned. You know, they put their faith in God and in Moses, his son, messenger. But later on, there's one that says, "Who are you? You know, who appointed you over us?" You know, and that doesn't end well for them. You know, what do they call that? Something crusher or something like that. In movies, when you tell them. Spoiler alert. So, Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together, and we thank you for helping us to understand your word and the similarities between what happened then and happens now and can happen again. And we should trust in you and believe in you and know that you are there for us regardless of what we may think the outcome should be. We ask that you be with us as we go and be with Jerry as he brings a message. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Morning, sir.
Morning.
Lovely morning.
You awake?
Yeah,
I think this one's
yeah,
good.
just get up a little bit ago.
Getting there? How you doing, lovely lady?
I had dogs.
I got the
Big
golden
bill
toys
to
now.
get
Candy.
You have a kidney?
Yeah, that does too. My bladder wakes me up.
How you doing? Yeah, you know, practice 20 miles.
Oh, you don't want to disappoint me.
No.
Not in this day of all days.
Did you go to work?
It was leftovers.
You can't eat that, you gotta eat the birds.
No, I made it back. We just put some in his mouth and I make it
Hey,
some
what you have to eat here?
leftovers.
No, why?
You didn't bring it to the function.
You didn't eat
Yeah,
nothing?
because I ate all.
Yeah, that's my cat.
Yeah, Grandma, I'm making something else.
Looks like a hat dog.
Yeah, feel it.
Take it back.
He's eating the birds. I'm feeding the
That's
birds.
not good for person.
Yeah,
It's not good.
deep popcorn.
Hey, what'd you eat the other day?
Billy popcorn.
I just lose.
Billy-
Oh, yeah, that was.
No, your brother told me he didn't eat nothing. What'd you eat?
Oh, I told John.
What'd you
No,
tell
you
me?
didn't.
What'd
You
you
didn't.
eat?
Stop. What do you mean you didn't?
Hotcakes.
Oh, you had hot cakes? Sausage? What, you gonna lose that?
You didn't have hot cakes.
You didn't have
You
hot,
like
Grandma said you didn't have hot cakes.
Oh, so we went,
cheeseburger fries.
You had cheeseburger and
we went to
fries.
Valley Berry. Oh yeah, we saw you.
Yeah, no kidding.
We saw another.
Yeah, come
I
on.
told them to sit down there and eat their food.
I remember now.
What?
2,500 there,
Chicken strips.
and you still
Okay.
stink.
Grandma said you had a hamburger and fries. I think, come on.
So I always wear that too.
He has both.
I always wear this.
Yeah, chicken strips too. Yeah.
That's why I always wear the shirt. Look what I collected. Look what I, John, look what I collected. Hey, don't touch it.
Popcorn.
I can't believe I got these bullets. Look what. How much is here? How I got that much. Hey, where did the kids at? Hey, you. I was trash today. And I was like, Grandma.
Take those tabs before you spill them.
Why right now? Why did they get two tabs? Why do they want that?
We just took that.
Then why?
I'm supposed to sit there.
But why? Why do you know with the kids, but they have their own name?
I don't know, that's always been that way.
That is weird. Because I'm older than Mama. Well, Breeze, I think it's closer to.
Oh,
Oh, I.
Probably.
Something right, bud.
Hey.
Unless he's hiding if I have a truck cap.
Yes.
We she have, like, so got somewhere.
You asked me a question. Yes.
I don't know what you do under the egg. Like cooking it up.
She make more popcorn.
All right, kiddos. We're gonna have to go out.
Can I have some? Like
We're
that.
down and walk in the sanctuary and you'll
Pick them up, kiddo.
They're coming.
I'll get it to her.
No.
See somebody around the computer.
Please come and get something.
We can sit down here. He'll do some good.
It doesn't hurt to sit out here for a while.
There's
Morning, Kevin.
morning, Kevin.
Morning, Kevin.
Morning, Kevin.